All right, what we need to do today is talk about the face. The face is the most complicated piece of the whole deal. And honestly, I think as we're getting to the end of the semester here, we've been building this character for a while. I think it's we need to move a little bit. We need to kind of like get going. But also, I'd like us to, kind of set our sights at an achievable level too. So the level of detail that you'll be able to do here with this is going to be different than you might have otherwise. So anyway, just kind of keep that in mind. In its basic idea, it's exactly the same as anything else. It really is. The difference is that I find that a lot of times I'm extruding and loop cutting slightly differently than I might have otherwise. And I also want to be very careful because, as I'll show you, when you loop cut stuff vertically in the face, it usually does a loop cut all the way down the body. And oftentimes we don't want that. I've got a couple little tricks that I do that are probably not even considered good form, but they work. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to option right click and I get myself the edge of the neck, and I'm just going to hit E to extrude, and I'm going to go like this, and then I'm just going to hit S to scale, and then I'm actually going to kind of bring it back down. And this again is where you can start to kind of play with how it's going to look a little bit more dramatically. For instance, I can take these three, move them up a little bit, and probably bring them in a little bit too. And then I can take these three that are here and bring them out. Whoops, whoa. There we go. And then up a little bit more for the start of what is going to end up being the chin. Bring that back a little bit here. Okay, then option right click gives me the whole thing, and I'm going to then extrude again. And left click and bring them on up. And then what I like to do is I like to start thinking about some of the facial features that I'm going to need. So I like to start thinking about, okay, there's the chin. Where's the point of the chin going to be? Okay, so like about here. And then I'll extrude again. I'm going to say that's going to be where the indent for the chin is going to be. So watch what I can do is I can take these three, bring that out just a little bit, maybe even these two just a touch more, and this one back just a touch. And then the other thing I can do is I can kind of take these three here and I can start bringing them out a little bit like this to kind of help start creating a little bit more of a rounded jaw. See how that's starting to work? And so now I've got this little indent here, which is right below the lower lip. And then I can start thinking again, okay, so I'm going to start extruding and extrude again, bring it up here. This is going to be where the upper lip may start, and we'll worry about that in a little bit. And then extrude again, and we'll loop cut where we want. Let's say that's going to be the second lip. So we'll just simplify it a little bit, and then extrude again. Let's say that's going to be the base of the nose. Extrude again, and that's going to be where the tip of the nose is. And so now what I can start to do is I can start to bring the nose out. And this oftentimes really helps me, is getting the nose kind of set. Then the other thing you realize is now the back of his head looks kind of like a can, okay, because it's a perfect cylinder. So one of the things that I might do very similar here is bring this line of points over a little bit and then back a little bit to kind of round out the back of the skull a little bit better. And do the same thing here with this series of points. And then I can start to bring, these out more to kind of allow me to start really working on the skull. And think about how your head is shaped, how your spine kind of comes up, and your neck is pretty flat until it gets right basically behind your ears, where your spine attaches at the base of the skull. Your jawbone juts out a lot sooner than the back of your head, if you really think about the anatomy of it. And that's actually rather important. So you know, I don't want my I don't want the head to be too to jut out too quickly, or else it's going to look a little weird. So, you know, and you'll just have to start, you know, you just have to think about it every once in a while and just start really, well, not every once in a while, just think really carefully about how you want things to really look as you start to bring it out in the back of the head. And you can, you know, bring things up a little bit. It's really, you're playing with it a lot, just little bits at a time. So now let's extrude again. So Option right click gives me the whole front. We're going to extrude, and now we're going to do a bigger section, and we're going to say this is the base of the nose where the eyes are, for instance. Well, actually, let's do cheekbones. They're the next big facial feature there, and then extrude again, and then that'll come into the base of the nose. So now I can start bringing the nose back a little bit more here, and you can see how it's starting to kind of look a little bit better. The other thing that I might do is, again, you can see it's really like triangular shaped. So that's where getting these guys out to the left a little bit more is, and you know, like the outside of the face is going to help us a lot. So I'm going to bring these out like this, kind of bring them back like that. You can kind of see how that's going to start making a little bit more of a difference. And then you can probably start bringing certain things out. So, you know, the jawbone should be a little bit more in line, but then the cheekbones are going to come out a little bit more. So, you know, I can now kind of bring this and this out, and you can kind of start to see how things are going to start working. Let's just do a couple more, and then we'll close it off, and then I'll show you kind of how to sculpt the face a little bit better. So extract again, going to go out. Now this is going to be, we're going to bring this forward for the eyebrows and stuff here, so this might be a good place to kind of start scaling it up again a little bit. Whoops. And then the back of the head obviously needs a lot of work here, but we don't want it to look, like I said, we don't want it to look like a can. But we also don't want to flare it out too quickly. And I think that's one of the things that, boy, it really looks like a can. That's one of the things that's really, I think, hard to do, is to keep it from flaring, you know, getting too fat in the back too quickly. You want them to kind of smooth out. You know, the other thing that you can do as you're modeling, especially back here, is we can merge points. So if I'm getting to a point where I'm getting really frustrated, as I am right now with all these, you can start to merge them too. So see, I can hit these, and I can just hit Alt-M at center, and it's going to merge all those together. But the problem with that is, notice that it's going to kind of create a ripple. You can kind of see that. That can be kind of tough. So maybe it's better to do it in, you know, stages. I'm not sure. You have to play with that. And then that changes, obviously, with how you set this. But we're almost there. So now we've got the forehead. Now we're going to extrude again here. That's basically the forehead there. We've got our eyebrows and stuff. And then I'm going to extrude, I don't know, probably 2 more times. One here. Scale that down. Oh, what's going on? There we go. Scale it down a little bit. Extrude again. Barely going to move it. Scale it down. Move it up just a touch. And then extrude again. And then one last time I'm going to extrude, scale it way down, and then I'm going to hit Alt-M to merge them at the center. Now, he's still got a little hole in his head, and that's because when I merged them, they literally went in the center here. Just take that and move it back to the center point. Now we've got a real, boy, he's got a long head, but it's actually kind of cool. you can bring things down. I mean, you know, the resizing and stuff is actually really easy. What's really hard is all the facial features. So now what I want to do is I want to start bringing some of this out. What I recommend is actually turning off your subsurface for a little while and maybe even going to wireframe mode and using something called Circle Select. And Circle Select is actually really cool. You just hit the C key. So I'm going to put it right on axis here. I'm going to hit the C key, and it allows me to highlight a bunch of vertices just like that with like a paintbrush. I can hit the Option key, and it will deselect things, and it will keep selecting things until I right-click, and then it's off. And now I've got this, and I can just kind of take a few and stretch them out. And that's really what it takes. It's just a lot of playing. Whoops. To kind of start getting the basic idea of the face and start getting it to look pretty good. It might probably help, now that I'm thinking about it, probably help if you didn't do quite as many loop cuts at first, right in here, because I'm dealing with a lot to get the head the size that I want it to be. You can kind of see how I'm just kind of trying to resize it a little bit. And oops, see, I don't want to do that. And then the other thing you want to start doing is playing with the creases, especially with the nose. So what I might do is here along the ridge line, I'll highlight these 2 points here, Shift E, and see if I can crease just a little bit. Not a ton, just a little bit. Then crease this area here. Again, not a ton, but just enough to start getting the nose out there. The other thing that you can do to start maybe flattening the nose out, instead of doing those two things, let's re-highlight that, is a loop cut. But here's one thing that I wanted to demonstrate to you is, if you do a loop cut, if I do a loop cut here, you can see how it goes all the way down the body. And it may create a ton of extra vertices that I don't want. So I click off of that. One of the things that you can do then, if you just want a loop cut, let's say right along the nose, you don't want to do any loop cuts anywhere else, is temporarily you delete an edge below and above. And so now when you hit the loop cut, it'll just go right there. And so now I can bring this out a little bit more and kind of give the nose a little bit more structure, if you will. Make it thinner in the middle. You know, you have a lot more options that way. And then what you need to do is, once you've done that, you'll notice now you have to refill those in, but you have to do it a slightly different way. You can bring those back together with the F key, and then you'll be able to get the forehead back. But then here you have to connect your new point to one of your old ones. Like so. And then same thing down here. So I've got this new point here. I have to reconnect it to one of my old points. And basically what's happening is I'm making a series of triangles now. But that's okay. They can exist within the whoops. Why didn't that fill? There we go. And so what that allows me to do is give my nose a little bit more, width. I might want to loop cut again, right down along the side here. And it's kind of nice it doesn't go any further because I already have that. And then that way I can kind of work on a flare of the nose here a little bit. And then I might actually want to bring it back a little bit. You see how that's starting to work. So you can really start to play with a lot of this stuff very successfully. If I highlight these three here and do a little bit of a crease, That didn't work the way I wanted it to. Take the subsurf off for a second. Ah, that's why. I missed one. So now I can kind of take some of these and I can crease them to kind of create a nice, now I'm not doing a full crease, about 0.6 to kind of create the base of the nose. One of the other problems that I noticed here, if you take the subsurf off, you'll notice that I've kind of got this point here, and then I got a quad that's kind of being flipped over on itself. Can you see how that's kind of odd? That makes a messy, that makes, you know, like a messy quad right there, because it's kind of like going in and then getting flipped on itself. So when I see something like that, I'll highlight it and I'll delete the face, and then I'll draw a line between these two where there should be a line, and then I'll refill everything. And now if I turn subsurf back on, you can see how I'm starting to get a little bit more of a natural looking reaction to this. Bring this down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm starting to get a better nose. It's already starting to look a lot better, actually. And I could do a whole bunch of things. Another thing I might do is try another loop cut here. Okay, and bring this in a little bit. And then I might even try one more loop cut down the length of the nose here, right? And then I can bring this one in a little bit, and this, whoops, and that one out a little bit. And you can see, just again, by sometimes creating more points, you gotta be careful. I don't want to create too many points, right? You know, I mean, but you can kind of see how by doing that, I've kind of created a pretty decent nose. That's got some good shape to it. Now, some of you might go, okay, that's great. What about nostrils and stuff like that? Mouths, eyes, that kind of thing. Well, basically, with those kinds of things, you need to make a hole. Now, I'm only going to do the nostrils today because I want you guys to get to work. But, you know, I want you to, you need to make a hole. But here's the important thing. Depending upon what happens with the camera, the hole needs to actually go somewhere. Because the last thing we want to do is actually be able to see inside his head, right? I think that would be a little odd. Okay, so if I look here at what I've got created here as far as the nostril is concerned, I've got a whole series of lines. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete my edges. You can kind of see here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight the whole rim. Does anybody guess what I'm going to do next? Extrude. Good. Extrude. Now I'm going to left click and I'm just going to hit scale. And actually, you know what? Let me hit extrude first, and then I'm going to move it down so we can see a little bit better. So there we go. And now I'm going to hit scale. And one of the reasons why I moved it down is because when I hit the scale, one of the things you'll notice that won't happen is that these two pixels don't move in. Which is a little frustrating to me because, oh, I see. So we really need to, yeah, why aren't they moving? They don't want to move away from the center point. Yeah, I'm going to turn clipping off for a second and move them in, and then maybe, there we go. So I turned clipping off, and I can move them back in. And now I'll turn clipping back on to kind of protect it. So now what I've got is I've started to get a little bit of, yeah, I've got my nostrils started here. And option click allows me to click all the way around. I can kind of go in there. Let's take a look at what this looks like in with the subsurf on now. It's not looking too shabby. Okay. Now comes the hard part, because sometimes you start losing the ability to see what you're doing. But I'm going to hit extrude again, And I'm going to move them up into the nostrils. Now, here's my problem. You see how it's kind of going through? So I'll hit Z and so that I can see the wireframe, and then I'm going to turn off the subsurf so I can kind of see what's going on. And we'll move them in, and I'm going to scale them down. Okay, so I've got actually like real set of nostrils going here. Maybe move them back a little bit like this. And then one last time I'm going to extrude, move them up. Anybody guess what I'm going to do now to finish this off? Alt-M. Merge them all to a center point. Now if I turn my subsurf back on, you can see that I've kind of got I've got nostrils. But they're too big. And part of that is the diameter of this middle point, number one, so we're going to bring them down. And the other thing is we want to put a little crease on them, probably. Not like that, but a little bit of a crease. And then we can move some of the points around and so on and so forth. Also notice they creased horizontal, vertical, these lines here. We want to get rid of that. So I'm going to shift click on all of those. That was part of the extrusion process. It frustrates me when it does that. Shift E, and if I can't get it back to 0, I'll just go in here and type 0. Now it's going to look a lot more natural. Not too shabby, huh? He's got a really big nose and a really flat head. But, you know, for cartoon characters and stuff like that, it's okay. I mean, you know, you can build something like this that has really big cheekbones and a little jaw and big forehead and stuff like that. A lot of it depends on your sketches. It's a lot of pushing and pulling, loop cutting, sliding, deleting faces, then refilling them, and, you know, you'll get your way through it. Take your time. Don't freak out too much. You know, it takes a little while, but also, you know, pay attention to the details. If you're going to do a mouth, the procedure is very similar to that of the nose. You're going to want to create a hole. You're going to want to extrude, make an opening and extrude it. So, you know, really simple. If I wanted a mouth here, let's just say right here, there's the center. I'm literally just going to delete, actually let's just delete this whole guy here. So delete that vertice. Now I started with a hole. I can bring that out. I can bring it back a little bit. You know, I have a lot of control here. And option click gives me what's around the mouth. Extrude. Scale. And I wouldn't make lips quite yet. I'm actually going to bring these in just a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude again, bring that in, and then I'm going to scale them up. See how that works? And that's going to start the inside of the mouth. Then extrude again, scale even more. And then I might do some, okay, so I got to be real careful here. Look, I'm going way outside of the face here with this. And then depending again on how, you know, specific I wanted to be, I might extrude, bring it back like this, and then I might start something like rotating them. So, whoops, no, like this, extrude, move out, and then I can actually rotate the selection and move it down and over, okay, and start making almost like a throat. Maybe it'd be wise to scale it down a little bit now. So that when I get out of wireframe mode, depending upon the angle that the camera's at, you don't see the inside of the head, you're actually seeing a throat, you know what I mean? And actually if you look, you can see the inside of the head still. So, you know, if a character opens his mouth really wide to say something, you don't want to see the back of the skull. And especially because, as we've been finding out with Anya's character, when we start doing hair and stuff like that, hair can actually go through the mesh a little bit. It shouldn't, but sometimes it does. And so if you actually have an inside view on the back of his skull, you'll see hair sticking in his throat. That might be a little weird, just a tad. Okay, so we want to be, careful. Eye sockets, the same thing. Make a cut, start with eyelids basically, but then give eye sockets, and then you actually put eyeballs in as separate objects. You make them separately, and you just kind of place them in the head, and then you can animate them that way. Okay, so you don't do eyeballs with him. The eyeballs are actually separate, and I don't want to go through all of that because it just takes ridiculous amounts of time. But you get the idea. The basics are all here, right? I mean, it makes sense. We just want to give him a mouth, a nose, eyes. If we get the hair, cool, we'll see. Okay? All right.